Welcome to 10 Minutes a Day, a daily reading of the Catholic Church's social encyclicals. Today we continue with Vatican II's Gaudium et Spes, promulgated by Pope Paul VI in 1965. There are many ties between the message of salvation and human culture, for God, revealing himself to his people to the extent of a full manifestation of himself in his incarnate Son, has spoken according to the culture proper to each epoch. Likewise, the Church, living in various circumstances in the course of time, has used the discoveries of different cultures so that in her preaching she might spread and explain the message of Christ to all nations, that she might examine it and more deeply understand it, that she might give it better expression in liturgical celebration and in the varied life of the community of the faithful. But at the same time, the Church, sent to all peoples of every time and place, is not bound exclusively and indissolubly to any race or nation, any particular way of life, or any customary way of life, recent or ancient. Faithful to her own tradition, at the same time conscious of her universal mission, she can enter into communion with the various civilizations to their enrichment and to the enrichment of the Church herself. The gospel of Christ constantly renews the life and culture of fallen man. It combats and removes the errors and evils resulting from the permanent allurement of sin. It never eases to purify and elevate the morality of peoples. By riches coming from above, it makes fruitful, as it were from within, the spiritual qualities and traditions of every people of every age. It strengthens, perfects, and restores them in Christ. Thus, the Church, in her very fulfillment of her own function, stimulates and advances human and civic culture. Her action, also by her liturgy, she leads them towards interior liberty. For the above reasons, the Church recalls to the mind of all that culture is to be subordinated to the integral perfection of the human person, to the good of the community and of the whole society. Therefore, it is necessary to develop the human faculties in such a way that there results a growth of the faculty of admiration, of intuition, of contemplation, of making personal judgment, of developing a religious, moral, and social sense. Culture, because it flows immediately from the spiritual and social character of man, has constant need of a just liberty in order to develop. It needs also the legitimate possibility of exercising its autonomy according to its own principles. It therefore rightfully demands respect and enjoys a certain inviolability within the limits of the common good, as long, of course, as it preserves the rights of the individual and the community, whether particular or universal. This sacred synod, therefore, recalling the teachings of the First Vatican Council, declares that there are two orders of knowledge, which are distinct, namely, faith and reason, and that the Church does not forbid that the human arts and disciplines use their own principles and their proper method, each in its own domain. Therefore, acknowledging this just liberty, this sacred synod affirms the legitimate autonomy of human culture, and especially of the sciences. All this supposes that, within the limits of morality and the common utility, man can freely search for the truth, express his opinion, and publish it, that he can practice any art he chooses, and that finally he can avail himself of true information concerning events of a public nature. As for a public authority, it is not its function to determine the character of the civilization, but rather to establish conditions and to use the means which are capable of fostering the life of culture among all, even within the minorities of a nation. It is necessary to do everything possible to prevent culture from being turned away from its proper end and made to serve as an instrument of political or economic power. Section 3. Some more urgent duties of Christians in regard to culture. It is not possible to free most of humanity from the misery of ignorance. Therefore, the duty most consonant with our times, especially for Christians, is that of working diligently for fundamental decisions to be taken in economic and political affairs, both on the national and international level, which will everywhere recognize and satisfy the right of all to a human and social culture in conformity with the dignity of the human person, without any discrimination of race, sex, nation, religion, or social condition. Therefore, it is necessary to provide all with a sufficient quantity of cultural benefits, especially of those which constitute the so-called fundamental culture, lest very many be prevented from cooperating in the promotion of the common good in a truly human manner because of illiteracy and the lack of responsible activity. We must strive to provide for those men who are gifted the possibility of pursuing higher studies, and in such a way that, as far as possible, they may occupy in society those duties, offices, and services which are in harmony with their natural aptitude and the competence they have acquired. Thus, each man and the social groups of every people will be able to attain the full development of their culture in conformity with their qualities and traditions. Everything must be done to make everyone conscious of the right to culture and the duty he has of developing himself culturally and of helping others. Sometimes there exist conditions of life and of work which impede the cultural striving of men and destroy in them the eagerness for culture. This is especially true of farmers and workers. It is necessary to provide for them those working conditions which will not impede their human culture, but rather favor it. Women now work in almost all spheres. It is fitting that they are able to assume their proper role in accordance with their own nature. It will belong to all to acknowledge and favor the proper and necessary participation of women in the cultural life. Today, it is more difficult to form a thesis of the various disciplines of knowledge and the arts than it was formerly. For while the mass and the diversity of cultural factors are increasing, there is a decrease in each man's faculty of perceiving and unifying these things, so that the image of universal man is being lost sight of more and more. Nevertheless, it remains each man's duty to retain an understanding of the whole human person, in which the values of intellect, will, conscience, and fraternity are preeminent. These values are all rooted in God the Creator and have been wonderfully restored and elevated in Christ. The family is, as it were, the primary mother and nurse of this education. There, the children, in an atmosphere of love, more easily learn the correct order of things, while proper forms of human culture impress themselves in an almost unconscious manner upon the mind of the developing adolescents. Opportunities for the same education are to be found also in the societies of today, due especially to the increased circulation of books and the new means of cultural and social communication, which can foster a universal culture. With a more or less generalized reduction of working hours, the leisure time of most men have increased. May this leisure be used properly to relax, to fortify the health of soul and body through spontaneous study and activity, through tourism, which refines man's character and enriches him with the understanding of others, through sports activity, which helps to preserve equilibrium of spirit, even in the community, and to establish fraternal relations among men of all conditions, nations, and races. Let Christians cooperate so that the cultural manifestations and collective activity characteristic of our time may be imbued with a human and a Christian spirit. All these leisure activities, however, are not able to bring man to a full cultural development unless there is at the same time a profound inquiry into the meaning of culture and science for the human person.